Picture this. You have everything you've ever wanted. Success, money, love, respect. Your life is so perfect it could be a movie. But what if I told you that sometimes the most dangerous person in your life is the one staring back at you in the mirror? This is the story of Sarah Chen and how she destroyed everything she loved based on a lie so perfect, so devastating, that by the time she discovered the truth, it was already too late. But before we dive into this twisted tale of revenge and deception, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell, because stories like this, they'll keep you up at night. Sarah Chen was 32 years old, and by every metric that mattered to society, she had won at life. Picture the kind of person you see on LinkedIn, the one whose success makes you question your own choices. She was the youngest partner at Meridian & Associates, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. Her penthouse apartment overlooked the entire downtown skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the sunrise every morning like a personal light show. But Sarah's greatest prize wasn't material. It was David. Dr. David Morrison, a successful cardiac surgeon with hands that saved lives and a smile that could stop traffic. He was the kind of man who brought you coffee in bed, who remembered your favorite flowers, who proposed on a beach in Santorini with a ring so perfect it made other women weep with envy. Their engagement photos had gone viral on social media. Relationship goals, people commented. Living the best life. Sarah would scroll through the comments, each heart eye emoji another confirmation that she had achieved something most people only dream of. And then there was Maya Rodriguez, Sarah's best friend since their sophomore year of college. Maya was the kind of friend who knew your coffee order by heart, who could make you laugh until your sides hurt, who had been there through every heartbreak, every triumph, every 3 a.m. crisis call. She was the maid of honor at Sarah's upcoming wedding, the person who knew Sarah's secrets better than Sarah knew them herself. Sarah's life was a carefully curated Instagram feed of success and happiness. Professional achievements, romantic milestones, friendship goals, every box checked, every dream realized. But you know what they say about perfection, don't you? It casts the darkest shadows. February 15th, 2:47 a.m. Sarah was fast asleep next to David in their king-sized bed when her phone buzzed. Now, most people would ignore a text at that hour, but Sarah was a lawyer. Late-night emergencies were part of the job. She reached for her phone, squinting at the bright screen. The message was from an unknown number. Check your email. You need to see this. A friend. Something about those words made Sarah's skin crawl. In her experience, people who called themselves a friend were usually anything but. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake David, and padded to her home office. The email was already waiting for her. Subject line: the truth about the people you trust. Attached was a video file. Security camera footage, black and white, timestamp showing it was recorded just 3 days earlier. Sarah recognized the location immediately. It was her own living room, but she didn't remember any cameras being installed there. What she saw made her blood turn to ice water in her veins. There was David. Her David, still wearing his scrubs from the hospital. But he wasn't alone. Maya was there, and they were intimate, kissing with the desperate passion of people who had been denying their feelings for too long. Sarah watched in horror as her fiancé and best friend moved together like they'd done this 100 times before. But it wasn't just the betrayal that destroyed Sarah in that moment. It was what they said next. The video had audio. "When are you going to tell her?" Maya asked, her voice breathless. David was adjusting his tie, getting ready to leave. "Soon, after the merger goes through at her firm. I need her signature on those property transfer papers first." He paused, and Sarah could see his cold smile even in the grainy footage. "Then we can be together properly. Split everything 50-50. Sarah's hand started shaking so violently she almost dropped the laptop. The property transfer papers. David had brought them to her last week, casual as could be. "Just some tax optimization stuff," he'd said. "Trust me, babe, I know what I'm doing." And she had trusted him. She'd signed without even reading them thoroughly. Maya's voice cut through Sarah's mounting panic. "What about the embezzlement setup? Are we still going through with that?" "Oh yes," David replied, his voice taking on a tone Sarah had never heard before. Cold, calculating, predatory. The forged documents are already in place at her firm. Once we trigger the discovery of her supposed theft, her reputation will be so destroyed that no one will question why she's losing everything. Poor Sarah, such a promising lawyer, brought down by her own greed. They both laughed. Actually laughed. Sarah slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, barely making it before she vomited up everything in her stomach. When she finally looked up at herself in the mirror, she saw a stranger, hollow-eyed, pale, destroyed. The woman staring back at her had just discovered that her entire life was a lie. Now, here's where most people would confront the cheaters. They'd scream, cry, demand explanations, but Sarah Chen wasn't most people. She was a lawyer, and lawyers gather evidence first, act second. For the next 3 months, Sarah became a ghost in her own life. She smiled at David over breakfast. She laughed at Maya's jokes during their weekly coffee dates. She played the part of the happy, oblivious fiancé and best friend, while secretly documenting every lie, every betrayal, every cruel deception. She hired a private investigator, not the kind you find online, but the kind who works exclusively for high-profile divorce cases and corporate espionage. She installed hidden cameras throughout her penthouse, pinhole lenses so small they were invisible to the naked eye. She recorded every phone conversation Maya and David had, using technology that would make the NSA jealous. And what she discovered was so much worse than she'd imagined. The conspiracy wasn't just about stealing her money, it was about destroying her completely. Maya had been feeding David inside information about Sarah's business deals, her client list, her investment strategies for over a year. They'd been siphoning small amounts from her accounts, amounts so small that even Sarah's financial advisors hadn't noticed the discrepancies. The property transfer papers? They'd already been processed. David now legally owned half of everything Sarah had worked her entire life to build, including the penthouse they were sleeping in every night. But the cruelest part was the embezzlement frame job. Maya had been photographing confidential documents from Sarah's home office and passing them to David, who was using them to create a paper trail that would make it look like Sarah was stealing from her own clients. When the time was right, they planned to accidentally discover the evidence and report her to the state bar. Sarah would lose her law license, her reputation, her freedom. She'd probably go to prison while David and Maya lived happily ever after on the fortune they'd stolen from her. Sitting in her office at 3 a.m., surrounded by bankers' boxes full of evidence, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to play games, she'd show them how a real player thinks 3 moves ahead. Sarah spent 2 weeks planning the most important presentation of her career. She called it a dinner party, but what she was really organizing was a trial. Judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one elegant evening. She sent out invitations to 30 people. David's colleagues from the hospital, Maya's friends from the boutique where she worked, both their families, mutual friends who had celebrated their engagement just months earlier. The theme, Sarah announced with bitter irony, was truth and consequences. The dinner was held at what David and Maya believed was still Sarah's penthouse, the penthouse they thought they had legally stolen from her. Sarah had spent a fortune on catering, flowers, the finest wines. Everything had to be perfect for what was coming next. As the evening progressed, the guests relaxed, laughed, shared stories. David played the part of the devoted fiancé, his arm around Sarah's waist as he told embarrassing stories about their relationship. Maya was radiant, toasting to friendship that lasts forever and love that conquers all. After the main course, Sarah stood up and clinked her wine glass with a silver knife. The room fell quiet, 30 faces turning toward her with warm, expectant smiles. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest like acid. "You know, I organized this dinner because I wanted to celebrate the people who have shaped my life. The people who have made me who I am today." She gestured toward a large screen that had been set up at the front of the room. "I thought we'd take a little trip down memory lane together." The lights dimmed. The slideshow began. The presentation started innocently enough. Photos of Sarah and David's first date, their vacation to Italy, the proposal on the beach. Pictures of Sarah and Maya in college, at birthday parties, laughing over wine at countless dinners just like this one. "These are the moments that matter," Sarah said, her voice warm and nostalgic. "The bonds we build with the people we trust most." But then the tone shifted. The photos became more recent, more revealing. Screenshots of text messages, bank statements, email correspondence. "You know," Sarah continued, and now her voice had taken on a different quality, still controlled, but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "I recently learned something fascinating about trust, about how the people closest to you, the ones who know your deepest secrets and vulnerabilities, can become your most dangerous enemies." A murmur rippled through the crowd. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Maya's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. The screen filled with financial documents, the property transfer papers that David had convinced Sarah to sign, highlighted to show how they transferred ownership of her assets directly to him. "It's amazing what people will do when they think you're not paying attention," Sarah said. "When they think you're too trusting, too naive, too blinded by love to see what's happening right in front of your face." Then came the security footage. The room erupted in gasps and shocked whispers as the grainy, black and white video played on the big screen. David and Maya, intertwined on Sarah's couch in Sarah's home, betraying Sarah in the most intimate way possible. David shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. "Sarah, I can explain." "Oh, you don't need to explain," Sarah replied, her voice carrying across the silent room like a blade. "I have recordings of that too." The audio began playing through the room's surround sound system. Every word, every cruel laugh, every detail of their plan to destroy her life, all of it broadcast to 30 of their closest friends and family members. The room was so quiet you could hear people's hearts breaking. But Sarah wasn't finished. She'd spent months planning this moment, and she was going to savor every second. "David," Sarah said, turning to face her fiancé with a smile that could freeze hell itself, "you'll be interested to know that I discovered your little property transfer scheme about 6 weeks ago. So I did some transfers of my own." The color drained from David's face. "That penthouse you thought you were stealing? I sold it. This dinner party that you're enjoying so much, it's being held in Maya's apartment, the apartment that I purchased from her landlord about 3 hours ago." Maya made a sound like a wounded animal. The implications were sinking in. She was now homeless, and the woman she'd betrayed owned the roof over her head. "And Maya," Sarah continued, her voice sweet as poisoned honey, "remember that business loan you co-signed for your little boutique? The one I helped you qualify for because you said your credit wasn't good enough? Well, it turns out that when you commit fraud against a co-signer, the bank can call in the full amount immediately. I've already provided them with evidence of your extracurricular activities." Sarah turned to address the entire room, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had just reclaimed her power from the people who tried to steal it. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that I've sent copies of all this evidence to the police, the medical board, and their respective employers. David will likely lose his medical license for fraud and conspiracy. Maya will lose her business, her apartment, and probably spend some time in prison for embezzlement and identity theft." The room was deadly silent. 30 people sat frozen, unsure whether to look at the evidence still playing on the screen or the 3 people at the center of this devastating drama. "You wanted to destroy my life?" Sarah asked, her voice rising for the first time that evening. "Congratulations. You've destroyed your own." David and Maya sat in stunned silence as the weight of their destruction settled around them. Everything they'd schemed to steal, they'd now lost permanently. Their reputations, their careers, their financial stability, their freedom, all of it gone in one perfect, devastating evening. As the shocked guests began to file out, Sarah felt a satisfaction deeper than any professional victory she'd ever achieved. Justice had been served. So why did she feel so empty? After the last guest left, Sarah stood alone in what used to be Maya's apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of 3 lives. She should have felt victorious. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt hollow. She walked to the bathroom to splash cold water on her face, to wash away the evening's intensity. But when she looked up at her reflection in the mirror, she froze. Behind her reflection stood Maya. Not the devastated, broken Maya from the dinner party, but Maya from 3 months ago, Maya before Sarah knew about the betrayal. She was wearing the yellow sundress she'd worn to their last innocent coffee date, and she was smiling sadly. "I'm sorry, Sarah," the reflection said. "I'm so sorry you had to find out this way." Sarah spun around. The bathroom was empty. She looked back at the mirror, and now David was there too. The David from before. The one who used to bring her breakfast in bed and leave little love notes in her briefcase. "We never meant for it to go this far," reflection David said, his voice full of the warmth she'd fallen in love with. "We just fell in love. But we should have been honest with you from the beginning." "You're not real," Sarah whispered to the mirror, her voice cracking. "This is just guilt. Just my conscience playing tricks." But then both reflections spoke in unison, their voices echoing strangely in the small bathroom. "Are you sure?" Sarah's phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number that had started this whole nightmare. "Meet me at Cafe Luna on 5th Street. Come alone. You need to know the truth about tonight." A friend. The same signature. The same mysterious contact who had sent her down this path of revenge in the first place. Music becomes ominous. Sarah stared at the message, a cold dread settling in her stomach. Something was wrong. Something about this entire evening felt orchestrated. Cafe Luna was the kind of 24-hour diner that attracted insomniacs, shift workers, and people running from their problems. At 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, it was nearly empty, except for a tired waitress and an elderly woman sitting alone in the corner booth. The woman looked familiar, but Sarah couldn't place her. She had silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the patient posture of someone who had been waiting a long time for this moment. "You don't remember me," the woman said, as Sarah approached the table. "But I remember you very well. I'm Helen Vance. I used to work for your family when you were 10 years old." Sarah's blood turned to ice water. Helen Vance. The name hit her like a physical blow, dragging up memories she'd buried for over 20 years. Helen had been their housekeeper, a quiet woman who made the best chocolate chip cookies and always remembered to buy Sarah's favorite cereal. She'd worked for the Chen family for 3 years until money went missing from Sarah's mother's jewelry box. $50 that vanished one afternoon while Helen was cleaning the master bedroom. Sarah's mother had called the police immediately, convinced that Helen had stolen it. Despite Helen's tearful denials, despite her spotless record with other families, she'd been arrested, charged, and eventually convicted. Sarah had been too young to understand the full implications then, but she remembered the trial. Helen's life had been destroyed. She'd spent 2 years in prison and had never been able to find work as a domestic worker again. "You sent me that video," Sarah whispered, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. Helen smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile anymore. It was the smile of someone who had spent 22 years planning the perfect revenge. "I sent you everything," Helen confirmed. "The video, the financial documents, the audio recordings of their conversations. All of it." "But that's impossible," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "I saw them together. I heard them talking about stealing from me, about framing me for embezzlement." "You saw what I wanted you to see," Helen interrupted. "Technology is quite amazing these days, isn't it? Deepfake videos that are virtually indistinguishable from reality. AI voice synthesis that can perfectly mimic anyone's speech patterns. Financial documents that look absolutely authentic until you examine them with forensic accounting software." Ara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I fabricated everything. Sarah, every piece of evidence you've spent the last 3 months collecting, every document you presented tonight, every recording that convinced you to destroy the lives of 2 innocent people, all of it was fake." Helen leaned forward, her eyes burning with decades of suppressed rage. "David and Maya never betrayed you. Their only crime was falling in love with each other. Something that happens every day. something that adults usually handle with conversation and compassion. But you chose nuclear devastation without ever once trying to simply talk to them. Sarah's mind reeled as the implications crashed over her like a tsunami. But I saw the timestamps on the security footage. I verified the bank records. All fabricated, Helen said calmly. Do you know how easy it is to create fake timestamps? To generate believable financial documents? I've had 22 years to learn these skills, Sarah. 22 years to plan this moment. I watched you grow up from prison. I followed your career, your success, your perfect life, and I waited for the right moment to show you what it feels like when someone destroys your entire existence based on lies. Sarah's phone was in her hand, scrolling frantically through her missed calls. 17 from David, 12 from Maya. All from the last few hours, after the dinner party had ended. The text messages painted a picture that made Sarah's heart crack in half. David. Sarah, what the hell was that tonight? Why would you think Maya and we need to talk? Now, Maya. I don't understand what happened. That wasn't real footage, Sarah. Please call me back. We can work through this, David. I'm at the hospital. My department head just called. I'm suspended pending investigation. Sarah, please, whatever's wrong between us, we can fix it. Don't do this, Maya. My landlord just called. He says you bought my building? Sarah, I don't understand what's happening. Please talk to me, David. The police are here. Sarah, what evidence did you give them? Why do they think I'm a criminal? Please, I love you. Call me back, Maya. I lost my job. The bank froze my accounts. Sarah, please, I don't know what I did wrong, but we can fix this. You're my best friend. The final message from David, sent just an hour ago. Maya and I are going to the police to report you missing. We're terrified something happened to you, despite everything that's happened tonight. We love you. Please come home. They were worried about her. After she'd destroyed their lives, humiliated them publicly, stolen their homes and livelihoods. They were worried about her safety. Check the real security cameras in your building, Helen said, watching Sarah's face crumble as reality set in. Check your actual bank records, not the ones I created for you. Talk to your doorman about who's been visiting your apartment. Do any actual investigation instead of just believing what someone calling themselves a friend told you. Sarah looked up, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why did you do this to them? They never hurt you. Helen's voice becomes cold as winter. Because, Sarah, I wanted you to learn what I learned 22 years ago. That sometimes the most dangerous person in your life isn't the one who lies to you. It's the one who makes you want to believe those lies. Helen leaned back in the booth, her revenge finally complete. You could have asked David about your concerns. You could have sat Maya down and had an honest conversation. Instead, you chose to believe the worst about people who genuinely loved you because some part of you wanted to believe it. That's what I learned about your family all those years ago. The money that went missing from your mother's jewelry box. It had fallen behind the dresser. Your father found it 3 days after I was arrested, but your mother was too proud to admit her mistake. They let me go to prison rather than face their own error and judgment. Sarah felt like she was drowning. How did you know I would react this way? How did you know I wouldn't just confront them? Helen's smile was sad and knowing. Because I watched you destroy a homeless man's life when you were 16, remember? You accused him of stealing your purse when you'd actually left it in your friend's car. You never apologized, even after the truth came out. I knew then that you were your mother's daughter. Someone who prefers to crush others rather than admit uncertainty. The apple, Helen said quietly, doesn't fall far from the tree. Sarah tried to speak, but no words came. Everything Helen was saying was true. She had jumped to conclusions about the homeless man. She had chosen nuclear revenge over simple communication. She had become exactly the kind of person who destroys innocence to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. There's one more thing, Helen said, standing to leave. The real reason David and Maya were spending so much time together lately? They were planning a surprise birthday party for you. That's why they were being secretive, why they were having private conversations. Your birthday is next week, isn't it? They'd already booked the venue, ordered your favorite flowers, invited everyone you care about. Maya was even flying in your college roommate from Seattle as a surprise. Sarah's phone buzzed with a notification. A calendar reminder, Sarah's 33rd birthday party planning meeting, Maya's apartment, 7 p.m. The meeting that would now never happen. The party that would never be thrown. The friendship and love that would never be repaired. Helen walked toward the door, then turned back one final time. Now you know how it feels, Sarah. Now you know what it's like to lose everything to someone else's lies. The only difference is, I had to spend 22 years planning this. You chose to believe my lies in 3 hours, because they confirmed what you already suspected about human nature. Sarah sat alone in the diner until sunrise, staring at her phone, trying to find the words to call David and Maya back. But what could she say? How do you apologize for destroying someone's life based on lies you chose to believe? She drove to Maya's apartment building, the building she now owned through her revenge. Through the windows, she could see David and Maya sitting on the couch, both of them crying. Maya was showing David something on her laptop, probably the social media posts that were already going viral from the dinner party. Sarah Chen Revenge was trending on Twitter. Someone had recorded parts of the evening and posted them online. The comments were brutal, but not in the way Sarah had expected. People weren't supporting her dramatic revelation. They were questioning it. "This seems fake," one comment read. "Those financial documents look photoshopped." Did anyone else notice the audio quality changes during the confession? Sounds like AI voice synthesis to me. Why wouldn't she just talk to them first? This feels like someone who wanted an excuse to go scorched earth. Professional forensic accountants, video experts, audio specialists. They were all pointing out the inconsistencies that Sarah had been too blinded by rage to notice. The revenge she thought was perfect was unraveling in real time, and the internet was watching. But the most devastating comment came from someone who knew her personally. Sarah Chen was my lawyer 5 years ago. She destroyed my ex-husband in our divorce based on fabricated evidence. I should have known she'd do this to her own friends. Some people are just poison. Sarah realized with growing horror that this wasn't the first time she'd chosen destruction over communication. It was a pattern, a flaw so deep in her character that a stranger had been able to predict and manipulate it perfectly. Her phone rang. It was her law firm. "Sarah, we need you to come in immediately. There are some irregularities in your recent case files that have come to light." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, understanding immediately what was happening. Helen hadn't just destroyed her relationship with David and Maya. She'd engineered Sarah's entire professional downfall as well. While Sarah had been focused on her personal revenge, Helen had been feeding information to Sarah's professional enemies, providing them with real evidence of Sarah's past ethical violations, her willingness to fabricate evidence when it served her purposes. Sarah's phone buzzed with notifications. Text messages from colleagues, emails from clients, missed calls from reporters who had gotten wind of the story. Her perfect life was crumbling in real time, and she was powerless to stop it. But the worst part wasn't losing her career or her reputation. The worst part was looking in her rearview mirror and seeing David and Maya in the apartment window, holding each other while their world fell apart around them. They were comforting each other through the destruction Sarah had caused. Even now, even after what she'd done to them, they had each other. Sarah had no one. Sarah drove aimlessly through the city as the sun rose, her phone buzzing constantly with calls she couldn't bear to answer. Finally, she pulled into a parking garage and sat in the silence, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah Chen was forced to confront who she really was. Not the successful lawyer, not the perfect fiancé, not the loyal friend, but the person underneath all those carefully constructed identities. She was someone who chose to believe lies because they justified the darkness she already carried inside. She was someone who preferred nuclear devastation to vulnerable conversation. She was someone who had built a career on destroying others and had convinced herself it was justice. Helen had been right about everything. Sarah hadn't been the victim of an elaborate betrayal. She'd been the willing participant in her own manipulation. Because some twisted part of her had wanted David and Maya to be guilty. It had given her permission to unleash the cruelty she'd been suppressing for years. Her phone rang again. This time it was her mother. Sarah, honey, I just saw the news. Are you okay? For a moment, Sarah almost laughed. Her mother, the woman who had let an innocent person go to prison rather than admit her mistake, was asking if she was okay. Mom, Sarah said quietly, do you ever think about Helen Vance? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Who? Our old housekeeper, the one who went to prison for stealing money that fell behind your dresser. Another pause. Longer this time. Sarah, why are you bringing up ancient history? That woman was a thief. No, Mom, she wasn't. And you knew it. You knew it. But you let her go to prison anyway, because admitting you were wrong was harder than destroying an innocent person's life. Just like I knew David and Maya were innocent, but I destroyed them anyway because facing the truth about myself was too hard. Sarah, you're not making sense. You need to come home and... Sarah hung up. For the first time in her life, she'd refused to enable her family's willful blindness to their own cruelty. But it was too late to save David and Maya. Too late to save her career. Too late to save anything that had mattered. Sarah sat in her car as the city woke up around her, understanding finally that she hadn't been the victim of Helen's revenge. She had been Helen's weapon, a weapon aimed at two innocent people who had made the mistake of loving her. And the most devastating part? Helen had known exactly how to manipulate her because Sarah had never really hidden what she was. She'd just hidden it from herself. 3 months later, Sarah Chen was living in a studio apartment in a different city under a different name. She'd lost her law license, her fortune, her reputation, and most importantly, her ability to lie to herself about who she really was. David had lost his medical license due to the public scandal, despite the evidence against him being proven fabricated. He was working as a paramedic now, still saving lives but in a much smaller way. Maya had lost her business and her apartment, but she'd started over, working at a local bookstore and slowly rebuilding her life. They were still together. Sarah had seen them once, walking down the street in what used to be her neighborhood, holding hands and laughing about something. They looked happy. Not the desperate happiness of people trying to convince themselves their lives were perfect, but the quiet contentment of people who had survived something terrible and found each other on the other side. Sarah never contacted them. How could she? What words exist for the kind of betrayal she'd committed? She'd chosen to believe lies about people who loved her. And in doing so, she'd revealed a truth about herself that couldn't be taken back. Sometimes late at night in her tiny apartment, Sarah would look in the bathroom mirror and see them there, the real David and Maya. Not Helen's fabrications, but the people who had genuinely cared for her. They would look at her with such disappointment, such profound sadness for what she'd chosen to become. And Sarah would have to turn away, because she finally understood the most devastating truth of all. The most dangerous lies aren't the ones other people tell us, they're the ones we tell ourselves. The lies that make us feel justified in our cruelty, righteous in our destruction, innocent in our choices. Helen Vance had spent 22 years planning the perfect revenge, but she hadn't really needed to. She'd simply held up a mirror and shown Sarah who she really was. The rest, the fabricated evidence, the manipulated videos, the elaborate setup, that was just theater. The real revenge was much simpler and much more devastating. Helen had forced Sarah to see her own reflection clearly for the first time in her life. And once you see the monster in the mirror, you can never unsee it. In the end, Sarah Chen had gotten exactly what she deserved. Not the life she'd built on the foundation of other people's destruction, but the truth about what she'd built it with. Final pause. Music nearly silent. The woman in the mirror no longer looked perfect. She looked tired, broken, real. But for the first time in her life, she looked honest, and that terrified her more than any revenge ever could. Helen Vance never contacted Sarah again. She didn't need to. Her revenge was complete the moment Sarah understood what she'd done to David and Maya, based on lies she'd chosen to believe. But here's the most chilling part of this story. Helen didn't create Sarah's capacity for cruelty. She simply recognized it, cultivated it, and gave it a target. Voice becomes directly addressing the audience. The question isn't whether you feel sorry for Sarah Chen. The question is whether you recognize the part of yourself that might make the same choices she did. Because we all have that voice inside us. Don't we? The one that whispers that the people who hurt us deserve what's coming. The one that says we're justified in our anger, righteous in our revenge. The one that tells us we're the hero of our own story, no matter who we have to destroy to maintain that narrative. Sarah's story isn't really about revenge. It's about the lies we tell ourselves to justify becoming the villain in someone else's life. It's about how easy it is to choose destruction over communication, cruelty over compassion, lies over truth. And it's about the terrifying possibility that the person we should trust least is the one staring back at us in the mirror. The mirror never lies. It just shows us what we've chosen to become. And sometimes, that's the most devastating truth of all. So, what did you think of Sarah's story? Did you see the twist coming? Or did Helen's revenge catch you completely off guard? Let me know in the comments below. And more importantly, be honest. Do you think you would have made different choices than Sarah did? If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe for more psychological thrillers that'll make you question everything you think you know about human nature. Hit that notification bell because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. And remember, the most dangerous enemy might be the one looking back at you in the mirror. I'll see you in the next story. Sweet dreams.